Some of my favorite Pokemon are not the typical picks like Charizard. I actually like Pokemon like Chatot. It's kind of weird, it's kind of forgotten, and for me it's thematically relevant to my life because Chatot is based off of music. After all, its head and its little crest are all based on a music note. Now, you might be hearing a very high-pitched meowing sound in the background. This is because we have an 18-week-old foster cat, and he is orange, just like Churro. So expect a lot of cat sounds today in this video about a flying type Pokemon. Today, I'm going to be beating Pokemon Platinum with Chatot only, and I expect this to be pretty rough because Chatot is a single stage Pokemon. Luckily, it has the medium slow growth rate, but its base stats are not particularly good. 76 HP, 65 attack, 45 defense, 91 speed, 92 special attack, and 42 special defense. For an ability, I had a choice between Keen Eye and Tangled Feet, so obviously Keen Eye is the pick. My accuracy is not going to be able to be lowered, and I'm sure I'm going to forget that at some point during the narration of this video and say something along the lines of like, what if they use Sand Attack? For a move pool, Chatot's working with what you would think a normal flying type would get. A bunch of normal type moves, a bunch of flying type moves, and then a little bit of coverage sprinkled in. It starts with Peck and Growl, learns Mirror Move, Sing, Fury Attack, Chatter, Taunt, Mimic, Roost, Uproar, Feather Dance, and Hyper Voice through Level Up. And then through TMs and HMs, I really want to have access to Hidden Power today, but unfortunately it's banned in first playthroughs of Pokemon Platinum for me, so I'm gonna have to rely on everything else, which is exclusively physical moves. Chatot's physical attack is so much worse than its special attack. Anyways, I do have access to coverage through moves like Steel Wing and U-Turn, but that's not a lot. At least Steel Wing gives me a theoretical answer to Bertha's Rock-type Pokemon. I'm still pretty worried about her though. And speaking of Rock-type Pokemon, the first gym leader that I have to fight is Rourke. Chatot has some upsides here. Number one, Growl can lower attack, which will make Rourke a little bit more manageable, and just around the corner at level 13, I am going to get access to Sing. Also, right after Rowan gives the player the Pokedex, he also provides you with the Return TM, a same type attack bonus normal move for Chatot, and as my friendship naturally rises in the early game through level ups and running around, although running around raises my friendship a very small amount, for a solo challenge like this, which is on the clock, it never makes sense to simply run around to raise friendship if you want to get a payoff from something like Return or an earlier evolution with friendship. To drive that point home, when your friendship is under 100, every time your Pokemon levels up, it increases by 5 points, whereas when you run around in the overworld, there is a 50% chance after 128 steps that your entire party's friendship goes up by 1. So the fastest way for me to increase Return's power right now is simply leveling up Chatot, and in order to do that, I'm going to fight every single optional trainer along the way to Rourke. One of the mandatory battles is against the second rival. I want to talk about him just because we need to first talk about his team. In this case, he's choosing Piplup. I felt like it would be most difficult for Chatot to go up against a Steel type since that typing resists all of my go-to moves. Once I knock out his first Pokemon, the Starly, I level up to 13 and I have the chance to teach Sing. I had to choose between giving up Growl or Mirror Move. I think Growl has more utility or potential utility against Rourke to lower his Pokemon's attack stat, so I chose to let go of Mirror Move. It's typically not very good in solo challenges, although I did find one niche use for it in Generation 1 with Fearow against Lieutenant Surge in Yellow version, because you can use it to get the same type attack bonus with a move like Mega Punch or Mega Kick, and then knock the Raichu out in one turn. That's the only time though in these videos I've used Mirror Move, at least to the best of my knowledge. I have played so many of these solo challenges now, and they're all sort of starting to blend together. With Sing on my set, I have an option for Rourke, and I could go straight to him right now without fighting any more trainers, but I don't think that that's the right choice. Peck and Return both won't do enough damage. If you need proof of that, check out this battle against a random wild Onix in Orberg Mine. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to beat Rourke right now at the current level. After all, his Geodude and his Onix both have rock-type damage-dealing moves, Rock Throw in this case, so I need to prepare a little bit more for them. But how much leveling is too much leveling? Well, I'm not sure. I could just train all the way to level 21. It's not going to take that long because the medium slow growth rate has really improved my pace. Plus, Chatot's knocking out all of these wild Pokemon extremely quickly, especially the Machop because I have super effective damage with Peck. That said, I did want to try Rourke at least once before just arbitrarily leveling to 21, so I went in at level 18 over a damage rounding threshold, crossed my fingers, and hoped that Sing would be enough. He leads with Geodude, right away Sing misses, and as soon as I got hit by Rock Throw, I knew that this was not going to work out. I'm sure that Chatot can pull this off, but after Generation 1, Sing is just not very good in solo challenges, because when the enemy wakes up, they still get to attack at least once before you can put them back to sleep. Obviously, Generation 1 sleep is broken, so it makes sense that I would use it in Generation 1 and kind of try to avoid it in other generations. For now, I think the best option for defeating Rourke is simply going back to the wild, leveling up to 21, and getting access to Chatter. It's a base 60 power flying type move that deals special damage, and for this reason alone, I think it's going to be good against Rourke even though it's resisted. And I was right, look at how much damage it does to Geodude. It one-shots it right away. Then Onix comes in, and while I can't one-hit, I take it down to low health, Rourke heals, and then I knock it out on the next turn. That leaves only Cranidos, and it doesn't have any rock type moves, so Headbutt does pathetic damage, and I two-shot. This is one of those times that a fight's extremely hard and then extremely easy as soon as you level up and learn the proper move. Now with Rourke out of the way, I expect that things are going to get a lot easier for Chatot, since just around the corner we have a grass type gym leader, and then after that we've got a ghost type specialist, but this little bird's a normal type, so both of those gyms should be fairly straightforward. With Rourke cleared, now I want to talk about Chatter a little bit more, because this is a really unique move. As the signature move of Chatot, it is designed around the fact that Chatot is a parrot, which are well known for mimicking human speech. So in addition to inflicting damage, it can also confuse the opponent, but the chance that it confuses is based on one of the wildest mechanics in Pokemon. The player can record audio, and then I think Chatter plays the audio that the player recorded. This then gives the move a chance to confuse. If there's no audio, the chance is 1%, and then depending on the audio recording, the chance is either 11% or 31%. Also, if Chatter is used by a Pokemon that isn't a Chatot, then it has a 0% chance to confuse, which makes sense. If a Pokemon that isn't a parrot is using this move, it's probably just making noise or something. It's not actually speaking like a human. I'm going to applaud Game Freak for their choice of including this mechanic. It is really flavorful and super cool, but then I did a little bit of research on the internet and I found out that Chatot was banned from competitive play because players were recording inappropriate things with this microphone feature. Of course they were. How did you not see that coming, Game Freak? I guess the internet was a younger and more innocent place back in 2006. No, that was never true. Game Freak should have known what they were getting themselves into. Unfortunately for this solo challenge, I was unable to find a way to utilize the recording feature of the DS within this emulator. I have to use a very specific emulator in order to pair with all of the other pieces of software that I have. So if you know one that does work for this specific feature, unfortunately it's also not going to work for me. Unless you can get this feature to work within BizHawk, in which case cool, I already recorded the solo challenge. I really wish I could have had a chance to confuse. Okay, so Commander Mars is next. Normally I'm a little bit worried for this battle, but with Chatot, I don't have to be. Chatter is so good. I one-shot the Zubat and two-shot the Perugly. On my way to Eterna City, I had to make a choice. Do I start skipping trainers now, or should I still continue to battle everyone? And I decided for the latter approach, just because I think that Chatot is going to fall off pretty hard at some point in this challenge, and I want to get as many levels before that happens, so that I can use my rare candies at the highest possible level. Also, Chatot is leveling up quickly at low levels because of the medium slow growth rate. Once it reaches the mid-60s, its progress is really going to slow down. So unlike a lot of other solo challenges in Pokemon Platinum, I don't want to use my rare candies as early as I can. I want to delay them until later into the game. Also, some trainers that are typically extremely easy might be very challenging in this run, specifically Byron and Volkner. I am really worried about both of them. So I soak up all the training in the forest. This gets Chatot to level 27, then Cheryl gives me the Soothe Bell, great item to increase the power of Return this early into the run. By the time I'm beating all the trainers inside the Eterna City gym, Return's power is slightly higher than Chatter's, but remember that Chatot has much better special attack, so Chatter is still the superior move, especially against a grass type specialist. She leads with Turtwig. Now, I'll mention here that I did teach Chatot Taunt in the place of Peck, I don't know if this move is going to be useful, but potentially it could be used to foil something like turn 1 Reflect from the Turtwig if I'm not able to knock it out. But of course, I easily am with Chatter. After that, Cherrim comes in, it's also a 1-hit, and then Roserade comes out, which is also a 1-hit. So this was a really easy battle, just as expected. Although I did think that one of her Pokemon would survive, I guess the training really did pay off. Okay, time to collect a bunch of items. First of all, Dread Plate as well as Substitute TM inside the old chateau. Then the Thief TM just outside of the Galactic building, and then I go up against Commander Jupiter. I was expecting this one to be a little bit more difficult, but it isn't. I once again just two-shot the ace Pokemon here, in this case the Skuntank, so another easy win under Chatot's belt. Now, I do want maximum rare candies for this playthrough, so I'm going to go into the Wayward Cave and pick up this one additional item. It's a pretty large excursion in order to do this, and it costs a lot of time, but I think this is the safest way to play for the late game. Once arriving in Hearthome City, I grab the Shell Bell, and then I switch up my moveset. I could keep Taunt, which does have utility against Fantina, but I don't think it's going to be that useful. I can teach Thief in its place, so another Dark type move, and then I can also equip the Dread Plate to increase the damage of this move by 20%. In some cases against Ghosts, I think that this will be better when they have higher special defense, and then they have lower physical defense. I'm thinking like the Ghastly line or Fantina's Haunter. But in comparison with Chatter, this is not a huge upgrade even when it's super effective. I don't think it's going to be the make it or break it move against Fantina. It's actually probably not as good as Chatter against the Duskull at the beginning of the fight. Although its special defense is higher than its physical defense, Thief is not doing enough damage to one-shot, so maybe I should have gone for Chatter here and chanced that 1% chance to confuse. Haunter's next. In this case, because it has low physical defense, Thief is able to get the one-shot. Now I could have purely used this move to steal the held item from Mismagius, which is a Citrus Berry. Although I didn't think that was necessary, I would rather have more damage with the Dread Plate to ensure things like one-shots on the Haunter. I didn't want to get hit by Hypnosis, although then the Haunter doesn't really have anything that it can do to Chatot. Its moveset is Shadow Claw, Sucker Punch, Hypnosis, and Confuse Ray, so if it puts me to sleep, the only other thing it's gonna do is use Confuse Ray, at least I assume, unless it wants to fail Shadow Claw or Sucker Punch over and over again while I snooze. Last is Mismagius. Thief is not going to be able to two-shot, as you can see here, so then I start using Chatter and it does far more damage, so Mismagius does go down in 2 turns, and as expected, Fantina was easy. And now we have to go up against a fighting type gym leader. Yeah, Chatot's actually pretty good throughout this section of the game, but I think it's going to experience single stage syndrome by the time it starts reaching Crasher Wake and then definitely Byron. I have to face the rival next. This is typically a really tricky battle. The Staravia has Intimidate. I don't care about that though because I'm using Chatter, a special move. Also, it's able to one-shot the Staravia so you can never go for double team or use Endeavor. This is though the scariest battle that I've had since Rourke. That's because the Prinplup gets a critical hit with Bubble Beam and does a lot of damage to Chatot, but still not enough. I just two-shot and from there it's easy to clean up the final Roselia. Now, I didn't save on the next route, so I went into this mandatory double battle with my health low, and this was a mistake because there's a Bonsly here and it does know a rock type move, so I get taken to red health. However, by this time I have learned the move Roost, and this is a fantastic healing move for flying type Pokemon because it removes the flying type when it's used. This means I'm no longer weak to rock type moves, so I take much less damage on the next turn. Then my flying type comes back, but at this point I'm already attacking and I do more than enough to the Bonsly to knock it out. Before Salacion Town, right beside the Lost Tower, I'm going to make a quick stop to grab the Steelwing TM. I'm saving this for later, specifically Bertha. Just north of the town, I pick up the Roost TM. This will be useful if I want to get the healing move back quickly without visiting the move reminder. Okay, time to fight Ruin Maniac Calvin. I actually saved before him because his shield on could be really annoying. It has a double resistance to all 3 of my moves, Chatter, Thief, and Return. This is a glimpse into how Byron is going to be with his Bastiodon. Luckily in this case, I'm actually doing a lot more damage than I was expecting. I do get hit by a taunt, so I can't use Roost anymore. That could have gone badly for me if I didn't heal before this fight, but going in with full health, I just have enough and I eventually beat his final Pokemon, even though it did take some time. Ace Trainer Dennis is not a problem at all, and with that I make it into Veilstone City. There's only one important thing for me to do here. I'm gonna go immediately grab the coin case and then buy 1,000 coins, so I can purchase a Silk Scarf to improve the damage of Return by 20%. Now with its effective power being 140, 40 versus Chatter's 90, I think in most cases where both are doing neutral damage, return will be the superior option for Chatot to use. Now, you might be wondering about another move, which is completely broken. It's called Boom Burst. When I first used Chatot, this was one of its starting moves. I was playing in Generation 6, I think I was doing a run of X or Y. My girlfriend at the time had traded me a team of eggs. I hatched all of them and then did the playthrough with those Pokemon. Since I was a musician, she gave me Chatot, which made a lot of sense, and having access to Boom Burst right away made this thing easily my ace. By the way, Boom Burst has a power of 140, and it's a normal type move, which is also special. Honestly, it's a really disgusting move, especially when you start with it. By the way, this is an egg move for Chatot, so if you hatch a regular egg in Generation 6, it will not start with Boom Burst. When I sat down to do this challenge, I was hoping that I would get access to this move at some point, but it turns out they introduced Boom Burst to the series in Generation 6, so unfortunately, no Boom Burst today. I'm gonna have to continue relying on things like Chatter and Return. Luckily, Chatter is more than enough, even though its power is falling off for all of the fighting types here in the gym. Well, until I get to Maylene. Her Meditite is a one-shot with Chatter, and so is the Machoke. However, the Lucario is not. Chatter is doing roughly 1/3 per turn, and this is enough damage. However, the Lucario is using Drain Punch, which is neutrally effective, and it's also healing the Lucario every turn. So as I use Chatter over and over, I realized that I'm gonna have to 4-hit, and that made me really scared. What if Maylene uses a healing item when I bring the Lucario down to a sliver of health? Luckily for me, she doesn't, and I knock out the Lucario, just barely squeezing through with a win. Wait, I just realized something. Maylene does not have a held item, but Fantina does, and Fantina is the 3rd gym leader. I think this is actually a symptom of the fact that Fantina is a later gym leader in Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, but an earlier gym leader in Pokemon Platinum, and they just didn't change the held items. It would make more sense if Fantina didn't have a Citrus Berry, but Maylene did on the Lucario. In that case, I think I would have lost here, because the healing probably would have been enough that it would have survived one more hit and then attacked again. Okay, I want to just give you a little bit of insight into how hard this voiceover has been to record, so here's a little bit of footage from after I beat Maylene. Okay, I just beat Maylene, as you just saw. This is what I'm dealing with, right? Trying to do the voiceover for that section of the video right after I did it, but then this little guy is just constant purrs. Constant purrs. Yes, I know. Yeah, buddy. Okay. Also, his... yeah, you're gonna bite me now? Alright. His ears are very grimy because he has to have ear medication right now. He's very sweet. Yeah. Yeah, I know. You're great. You're great. Everyone loves you. Yeah, okay. Hi. Okay, hi. Let's get back to the playthrough now. I pick up a PP up. I've been collecting these throughout the run. They're going to be useful in just 1 second. I also grabbed the Aerial Ace TM. I would typically like picking this up with Pokemon that can learn it, just so I have a move that bypasses accuracy checks for the foggy area of the game that's coming up just after Crash or Wake. Prior to him though, I am going to do a lot more training. I fight a bunch of people west of Pastoria City just to level up Chatot as much as I can. Before entering the gym, I forgot that the rival spawns here and I did not save. This could have been bad in a different playthrough, but the Prinplup still does not have an ice type move, and this whole battle goes pretty much the same as it did last time, without the rival getting the lucky critical hit. With the rival and the mandatory trainers inside the gym out of the way, Chatot is level 45 before Crash or Wake, which means prior to the water type specialist, it has learned its best move for this playthrough. Hyper Voice after the Silk Scarf has an effective power of 162. It's getting the same type attack bonus, it also has 100% accuracy, and it's just a fantastic move. Unlike Hyper Beam, which has to recharge, Hyper Voice does not need to. And since I'm only using special moves now, I'm not impacted by Gyarados having Intimidate at the beginning of the battle. I'm not able to one-shot Wake's first Pokemon. This is unfortunate. He hits with Waterfall doing about a third, then uses a Hyper Potion trying to save Gyarados, but he doesn't get in another attack. attack. For the Floatzel that comes out next, I was anticipating it going for Ice Fang, so I went for Feather Dance to lower its physical attack. But then Ice Fang freezes Chatot, I go under half health, and it hits with a boosted Brine, knocking me out on the next turn. Alright, that did not go well. Next time, I can play this differently though. I can just go for Feather Dance turn 1 so Waterfall does less from Gyarados, and then Roost up so that I have full health by the time I knock it out. Floatzel comes in, I can hit it with Feather Dance and then go for Hyper Voice, and I was surprised to find out here that I am one-shotting Wake's Ace. The Quagsire is next, but it also goes down to a single hit. I think the strategy here was just spam Hyper Voice with the potential for maybe the Feather Dance stuff against the Gyarados, but against the Floatzel it didn't seem to help. So let's head now to Celestic Town through the foggy area. I'm just gonna say that my Chatot Taylor could really use Swift throughout this section of the game. That is a joke that I set up a long time ago that I was really waiting to pay off. Turns out though, Swift is a move tutor move, so it would be way too inconvenient to get. You need to collect shards in order to earn the tutor moves in this game, and for a move like Swift, that's just not time conscious. I could have taught Aerial Ace, but I decided against it. I want to stay with my current moveset at least for now. I could unlearn Feather Dance to have Aerial Ace throughout this section of the game, but what battles is that going to make easier? I guess against Ace Trainer Alyssa, it would be a lot less scary. The Girafarig did do decent damage and confused Chatot, so I'm left with only 4 HP. Okay, please Confusion, don't ruin my day. Luckily, it doesn't. I knock out the Girafarig and move on to the next double battle, which I really shouldn't be doing. I accidentally ran into these people. They have Raichu and Gyarados at the same time, which is always scary, especially if you're a flying type and then you're going to hit for super effective damage from the Raichu. Here's the thing though, Hyper Voice hits both enemy Pokemon, and it does massive damage. So I'm able to knock out their team in only 2 turns, and I don't even take any damage from Raichu because it targeted down my Bidoof. Following that battle, I get caught by the very next trainer, which is also not good because he has a Probopass. Another glimpse into what Byron is going to be like. This Rock Steel type takes quarter damage from both of my moves. Luckily for me though, Chatot's not going to take much damage from it because its only move that's going to do decent damage to me is Rock Slide, but I can just Feather Dance until it basically doesn't have any attack left. I could use Roost from here to heal up if I have to, but I don't. I just slowly chip away at it and eventually it goes down. Okay, time for Cyrus. He's really easy. I have nothing to say about this battle. Chatot is honestly a beast. This little thing is once again impressing me, and this time it doesn't even have Boom Burst. Now, I was informed by some of you that the choice specs exists in Celestic Town, and I went searching for it just now because I thought it might be useful for Chatot. There's the potential to equip the choice specs, increase your special attack by 50%, and then only use a move like Hyper Voice against Bertha's entire team. With the increased special attack, it might be enough to pull through with a victory and not have to rely on something like Steel Wing. Here's the thing though, you can't pick up the choice specs unless it's in the morning, so I'm gonna have to come back here later in the case that the clock adjusts to that time. I should have looked up how to obtain the choice specs before starting this run. I just thought it was an item that you could pick up at any time during the day. My mistake. In Canalave City, I have to face the rival on the bridge. This fight is surprisingly easy. Hyper Voice one-shots the Staraptor. I don't care about Intimidate. Rapidash goes down to a single hit as well, and then he sends in Heracross, which takes 4 times damage from Chatter and gets obliterated. Empoleon's next. It doesn't have an Ice type move. Its best move right now is still Bubble Beam. It doesn't crit, and I 2-shot. That leaves only Roserade, and even if I don't use Chatter, I still just one-shot with Hyper Voice. The rival in this playthrough has overall just been really a pushover. There hasn't been a single fight where I've been worried against him. Maybe the last battle before I fight the Elite Four is going to be the time where he can make a comeback. For now though, I have to head into Byron's gym and fight a bunch of steel types. We are going to go through each one of these random battles because typically these trainers are more powerful than Byron. The first one is Black Belt Ricky and his singular Steelix. I was expecting this one to take many turns, and then Chatot rolls a critical hit with Hyper Voice and one-shots Steelix. No, I'm not lying, we slowed this footage down a lot in case you missed it, so you can look over at your screen right now and watch the damage happen to the Steelix. Yes, it was a one-shot with Hyper Voice. I couldn't believe that. That made Worker Gary's Magnemite an easy one-shot using Hyper Voice, and then I moved on to Caesar's Scissor. In this case, I knew that it was going to take multiple turns. I have neutral damage with Chatter, but it's able to get the 2-shot, so Scissor ends up not being a threat. There's 2 Magnemites, They're both easy. Then I have to face Steelix again, there's 2 of them. In this case, I'm not able to one-shot because I don't get a critical hit. However, Hyper Voice is still almost one-hitting. Chatot did so much damage that I can just finish off the first Steelix with a follow-up Chatter on the second turn. I did not expect these battles to be going this way, and this had improved my confidence leading up to Byron. However, Brianna ended up shaking that confidence just slightly because the Bronzor here ended up taking quite some time to knock out, at least in comparison to all the steel types that came before. Still, I'm cautiously optimistic that Byron isn't going to be too bad. He leads with Magneton, and I'm able to knock it out in 2 hits without it going for Thunderbolt because it's prioritizing Metal Sound to drop my special defense. Initially this seems like a really bad choice, but hold on to that piece of information for later in the battle. The reason it seems like a bad choice is because the Bastiodon comes in next, and it's really wanting to go for Stone Edge to deal physical damage to me, which isn't going to do much since I'm going to spam Feather Dance, lower its physical attack, and then use Roost to heal back my health. This puts me in a position to slowly chip away with Hyper Voice and Chatter and eventually take down Byron's Bastiodon. Alright, this is all going really well. Then against the Steelix, I wanted to go for Feather Dance to drop its physical attack so it's not doing much damage when it uses Ice Fang. But I think because it sees my special defense so low, it instead prioritizes Flash Cannon, a special move, which is doing a lot of damage. And I'm not able to out-heal it using Roost, so that's a reset. In the next fight, against Bastiodon, I want to talk about its use of Taunt. Whenever it goes for this, I'm not able to use Roost to heal back to full health before the Steelix comes out. This leaves me in a shaky position against it. I just decided to go for Hyper Voice and hope for something like a massive critical hit. Maybe that'll knock the Steelix out, but I learn a key piece of information by doing this, because Hyper Voice is doing half damage to his Steelix. Even though Flash Cannon does enough to knock Chatot out, I'm armed with knowledge going into the next fight. I should just be able to 2-shot the Steelix and I don't have to rely on using Feather Dance against it. I tried the next fight at level 55, just hoping the damage ranges would be a little bit better, but I think they're actually kind of worse. I'm doing more damage to the Magneton, so Byron heals it, wasting a bit of my time. Maybe that means there'll be no Hyper Potion used on the Bastiodon, so maybe I'm changing my mind here. I think it might be an advantage. Although then the Bastiodon hits me with Taunt and I'm not able to heal, so I don't even make it by it to the Steelix. I reverted to the lower level and tried again. Turns out there's another downside at this level, which is Magneton can go for Thunderbolt on turn 1 instead of Metal Sound. It's not guaranteed to drop my special defense, which is quite bad. Then I have low health for the Bastiodon, putting me in a rough position. If I go for Feather Dance and lower its attack, then it can attack me and potentially knock Chatot out. But if I go for Roost, then it's going to be hitting me with its attack unaltered. Because of this, I'm not able to make it by the Bastiodon again, so I had to make a choice. Do I want to try and luck through this at level 51? It definitely is possible. Or do I want to make things a little bit more consistent on myself and make it by one of the most difficult trainers, at least theoretically, for Chatot? And I decided to make this as easy as possible, using all 8 rare candies going to level 59 before trying again. I also equipped the Shell Bell so that I'll be gaining back small amounts of health every time I attack his Pokemon. I don't think the damage boost from Hyper Voice is really needed at the higher level. I should still be able to 2-shot the Steelix. And then the Pokegods smiled upon me because instead of sending out the Steelix last like he has been up until now, Byron switches the Magneton out, sending Steelix in, allowing me to 2-shot it before knocking out the Magneton and moving on to the Bastiodon. I have full health for his ace, so this is perfect. Set up Feather Dance, use Roost to heal whenever I can, and then use Hyper Voice and Chatter to slowly knock it out. However, there was one moment where my heart had major palpitations here, because the Bastiodon gets a critical hit with Stone Edge. It did so much damage. However, Chatot survived. Because of that, I'm able to heal up using Roost and eventually defeat Byron. With Byron out of the way, things are going to go pretty fast. There's some commanders to defeat. All of them are easy despite the Bronzor being slightly annoying. After that, I have to make my way towards Snow Point City. On the way, I face Ace Trainer Dalton. Normally, he's really difficult, but in this case, I have moves that don't make contact and are special, so both of his Pokemon are easy to take down. Now, that leads us to Candice, and I think she was the one surprise in this solo challenge, at least for me up until this point, because I am recording this audio as I go through with the challenge. I didn't really expect her to be that difficult. I just thought I'd have enough damage against every single one of her Pokemon. But then this happened. Sneasel is first, and it can do damage with priority Ice Shard if it really wants to. Sometimes it doesn't do anything, like in this case. I knock it out in one hit. Abomasnow is also a one hit using Chatter, and then I can one-shot the Piloswine using Hyper Voice. This looks really good. I was assuming I would just two-shot the final Frostlass using Chatter, and that would be that. However, Chatter does do more than half, but then it heals with the Citrus Berry. Also, Blizzard is bypassing accuracy checks, and the Frostlass has Snow Cloak, which means it has raised evasion when it's in a snowstorm. And right now the weather is on the field because Abomasnow comes in first with Snow Warning. Just so everyone knows, Keen Eye doesn't mean I have perfect accuracy all the time, it just means my Pokemon's accuracy cannot be lowered. But the enemy can increase their evasion with things like Double Team or Snow Cloak. Because of that, Chatot misses, and Blizzard is bypassing accuracy checks, doing massive damage, so I take a reset here. Maybe Aerial Ace is the better choice. If it does roughly equivalent damage, then maybe I can pull through with the 2-hit damage range and bypass accuracy checks. But if I take damage earlier in the fight, then the Frostlass just does too much with Blizzard and Chatot faints. To heal, I could use the Shell Bell, but without Aerial Ace, I'm missing moves against the Frostlass, spelling defeat once again. Things were getting really bad, and then I found that I had an item hanging out in my bag which I've never used before, the Wise Glasses. This was one of the items that I just randomly picked up when I was looking for the choice specs in Celestic Town. Turns out the Wise Glasses boost special moves by 10%, so I can use this to slightly increase the damage that Chatter's going to do on any given turn. I think this is going to give me the damage I need to two-shot the Frostlass, provided I don't miss or Blizzard doesn't get a critical hit. But then, the second time around, Chatter gets the 1% chance to confuse against Frostlass. It hits itself, and because of that luck, I'm able to pull through with a victory against Candice. I was really hoping I was going to see confusion from Chatter, and it's just so poetic that it happened in this live or die situation. I think that Blizzard would have knocked me out since I had taken decent damage up until that point in the fight from the hail damage as well as Sneasel's Ice Shard. But a lucky win is still a win, so let's proceed with the run. Inside the Veilstone Galactic Building, I'm going to continue doing what I've been doing this entire time, picking up every rare candy, even if they take a little bit of extra time to obtain. This one typically requires 2 extra trainers, one of them's a spinner. I just decided to fight him right away today so that I could also get the experience. Cyrus at the end of this area is honestly pretty easy, and that makes me confident about the battle against him coming up in the Distortion World. Although he wasn't quite as straightforward as he was the first time around, so maybe I'm wrong there and I'm going to suffer. Commander Saturn isn't an issue at all, and then after him, I have to do the multi-battle at the top of Mount Coronet. Now this is the perfect opportunity for Chatot to show its complete dominance over the NPCs in this game. The Bronzor take 3 turns to knock out with Hyper Voice, while Barry's Munchlax does absolutely nothing to help out. Then Skuntank and Purugly come in. I go for Hyper Voice, it gets a critical hit on the Purugly one-shotting, and Skuntank was a one-hit anyway, even without a crit. After that, I one-shot both Golbats in a single turn with 1 move. Chatot is a monster. And I wasn't thinking about that when I arrived at Cyrus in the Distortion World. Instead, I was just a little bit rusty with my Platinum play because I haven't played this game in like 2 to 3 months at this point. You've been seeing the videos come out regularly, but I recorded all of the previous ones in one big batch over the course of like 2 weeks. Due to this rust, I just clicked on Cyrus right away and initiated the battle, so I didn't save throughout the entire Distortion World, which could be a really bad problem. I would have to go back before the multi-battle at the top of Mount Coronet, and then make it all the way through the Distortion World to get back to Cyrus if this fight goes badly. So with the stakes being incredibly high, can Chatot pull this off? Houndoom is first. I go for Hyper Voice, and I get the 1-hit. Weavile comes in next. It uses Fake Out, flinching Chatot, but then Hyper Voice gets another 1-hit. Okay, Gyarados is next. Now, I played this sort of risky. I used Feather Dance to lower its attack so that I could use Roost to heal my health to make sure that I could get through the rest of the fight. But I could have been frozen here like I was against Wake. However, that doesn't happen. So I knock the Gyarados out, and I have green health for the remainder of the fight. Honchkrow is a 1-hit, and so is Crobat. Chatot pulls it off. This thing is amazing. I love this little bird. Okay, but coming up next is Volkner. He's an electric type specialist, but typically he is extremely bad. Now usually that is because I've used my rare candies before Cyrus in the Distortion World to make that fight as easy as possible, but I didn't do that here, so maybe Volkner has the chance of causing a reset. His first Pokemon is Jolteon, and it survived. I didn't actually notice that it survived because the health was so low, and then I clicked a couple times. I was confused as to what was going on. Why is its sprite still hanging out here? And then I realized I just barely don't have enough damage with Hyper Voice. He heals the Jolteon, and I fail to knock it out in a single hit once again on the next turn. This is not good. That's also with the Silk Scarf boost. I am at level 67 though, just under a damage rounding threshold. So after knocking out the Jolteon and making it to the Raichu, I do end up losing, and I just decided to leave the gym. Even though it'll take a lot of time to get through the puzzles, I want to go and fight a few extra trainers to level up over the threshold so that I can come back and confidently one-shot the Jolteon. I push my training just a little bit further than level 68, so that's nice, I guess. After that, I make my way back to Volkner, and now I can in fact one-shot the Jolteon. Because of that, I just sweep his entire team. One-shot Raichu, one-shot Luxray, one-shot Electivire. This is the Volkner that I've come to know. It's a little bit unfortunate that we had one reset to him, but overall it hasn't slowed down the playthrough much. Now, let's move on towards Victory Road. Just inside the cave, I have to go up against the cool trainer that has a Blissey. This is problematic whenever you don't have any physical moves. The Blissey loves to set up light screens so that I do even less damage with Hyper Voice or Chatter. Then it's going to use Soft Boiled to constantly heal itself. And while the Blissey isn't making any progress towards knocking me out since Double Edge does so little damage and I just have Roost, she is stalling me out, wasting a bunch of precious time in this speedrun. I end up knocking out the Blissey a little bit faster than I was expecting to because I get a critical hit. Then I one-shot the Glalie, but the Magnezone at the end of the battle survives with orange health, goes for Thunder Wave, and then deals a lot of damage. I was incredibly scared that Paralysis was going to activate here. If it does, Chatot is going to lose this battle. So, will the status condition be my undoing? Well, the answer is no, it's not. I knock out the Magnezone and proceed with the cave. Although the very next trainer is another problematic person for Chatot to manage. Ace Trainer Omar has a Mamoswine with Blizzard, Ice Fang, and Rock Slide. And then his ace is a Rampardos, which has Head Smash and Ancient Power. I had to play around this one using Roost to reduce the damage from Rampardos using Ancient Power and Head Smash, and then I had to use Feather Dance on other turns to lower its attack so that it wasn't doing as much damage. This got very close after the first two hits, but from there with no Omni boosts, I was able to set up and then knock the Rampardos out without any issues. As I was leaving Victory Road, I quickly picked up the Sky Plate, but I don't end up using this for the rest of the playthrough. Turns out the Silk Scarf paired with Hyper Voice is just way too powerful. Now, prior to the Elite Four, I have to battle the rival one last time. His team is overall underwhelming. I can one-shot the Staraptor, the Heracross, the Rapidash, and then the Snorlax takes 2 hits or 3 hits to knock out, depending on damage ranges that I roll here. I get the unfavorable one first, but then after rest, I'm able to 2-shot. Then Empoleon comes out, and I was a little bit overconfident here. I went for Hyper Voice, which does roughly 1/3 damage, and I figured I could just knock it out with 2 more hits. However, then it takes me just under half health. This increases the damage from Brine on the next turn, and Chatot faints. Alright, so what I need to do against the Empoleon is just play a little bit more conservatively. Every time I get hit under half health, I just need to use Roost to heal up, then I can tank a Brine while doing 1 turn of damage to the Empoleon before using Roost again. It's slow, but it gets the job done. So the rival did end up getting his revenge, causing 1 reset in this playthrough. And it was a fairly long one at that, because I lost to his last Pokemon. With him out of the way now, the only trainer I'm really worried about coming up next is Bertha. So let's head into the Elite Four with Chatot. Aaron is first. 1-shot Yanmega, 1-shot Drapion using Hyper Voice, 2-shot the Vespiquen because it's set up with Defense Order and it's a pretty bulky Pokemon anyway. Heracross is of course a 1-hit, but I was expecting the Scizor to take 2. However, I get a critical hit. Yeah, Aaron was really easy. But now it's time to face Bertha. I have collected 12 rare candies, so at level 73 I can use these to go up all the way to level 85. I wonder if I can beat Bertha without using Steel Wing. Maybe it isn't required, because Feather Dance is pretty good against physical attackers. Whiscash is first, I go for Hyper Voice, and I one-shot. That's the perfect start to the battle. She chooses to send in Golem next, which I can't one-shot, but it does go for Sandstorm instead of attacking, which is perfect for me. Also, it knows no rock-type moves. The super effective damage it would have against Chatot is Thunder Punch, but without the same type attack bonus, I'm not really worried about it. Now, Sandstorm does increase Pokemon's special defense in Generation 4, as long as they're a rock type, but this isn't reflected by my overlay, so Rhyperior is going to take less damage from special moves now after being set up from the Golem. However, I realized turn 1 I can just go for Feather Dance, drop its attack, then go for Roost, removing my flying type so I take less damage from any of its super effective moves. And then I can just rinse and repeat, doing Feather Dance, Roost, Feather Dance, Roost, until the Rhyperior isn't doing anything. Even if it was slow to knock out with Hyper Voice, which it really isn't, I wouldn't have to worry about this Pokemon unless it got a critical hit. From there, there's only a Gliscor and a Hippowdon to clean up, and both of them are really easy to knock out. Alright Chatot, you are really impressing me. This is a fantastic run. Hilariously following that, Flint ends up being slightly sketchy. I'm not able to one-shot the Magmortar. Because of this, it hits with Thunderbolt, doing about half to Chatot. This would be concerning if his other Pokemon were ever going to get to attack, but they don't. Despite the fact I don't one-shot the Flareon, but it just doesn't do anything, it sits there. Okay, fine. Flint, typically bad in this case once again. Okay, so I went into the battle against Lucian, not remembering that the Mr. Mime has soundproof. Usually this is irrelevant, but in this case my two attacking moves are Hyper Voice and Chatter, both moves that are sound-based, and they cannot deal damage to Mr. Mime. So unless I want to make it through the entire battle using Struggle, which I don't think is possible, I had to reset. This does mean I'm going to have to give up one of my current moves. I wanted to keep both Chatter and Hyper Voice for special damage. Of course, Roost is fantastic, so I decided to give up Feather Dance to have Aerial Ace so that I can knock out the Mr. Mime. Also, physical damage would be good against the Gallade that's second. It has outrageous special defense. I didn't know this while playing, so I just went for Chatter. It doesn't one-shot, but Aerial Ace I think would have. I glanced down at his stats before attacking again, realized Aerial Ace was the better choice, and went for it, knocking out the Gallade. From there, I one-shot Alakazam, as well as Espeon, and move on to Bronzong. Now this Pokemon could be problematic if he sets up with Calm Mind, so he's taking less damage from Hyper Voice. But instead of going for that option, he just chooses to attack right away with Psychic, and I two-shot using Hyper Voice. I just want to say, Chatot has been doing so much better against Steel types throughout this entire run than I was expecting. Okay, it's time for Cynthia, and typically she doesn't cause problems for Pokemon. But this run has proven to us that Chatot is not a typical Pokemon. Spiritombs first. This Pokemon alone is one of the reasons that I've had to have a flying type move on my set throughout this entire run. I need coverage for ghost types. I knock it out in 2 turns, which is pretty good. Dark Pulse is able to knock out a single substitute in 1 turn, so running that instead of Aerial Ace doesn't make any sense. Next, she sends in Togekiss, and I was so surprised at how much damage this thing did with its Shockwave. I have to use Roost, and it gets a little bit scrappy for a moment before I knock out the Togekiss and move on to the Lucario. And I have to use Roost over and over again here while it's spamming Stone Edge. I was hoping it would either miss or run out of PP, but then it goes for Aura Sphere, gets a critical hit, and knocks Chatot out. Alright, Cynthia is going to cause problems. Not what I was expecting. One way I can deplete Stone Edge's PP from Lucario a little bit faster is if I use Fly in the place of Aerial Ace. Also, it is super effective and it will do more damage because in Generation 4 it got a base power boost up to 90. Still, the Togekiss is quite sketchy. Roost is the solution here. I am so glad I have this move on my set so that Shockwave isn't super effective on every turn. I finish Togekiss off, then I use Fly on the Lucario, and yeah, this feels better than having Aerial Ace. Still, Stone Edge can do a lot, and I do have to use Roost here in order to knock out the Lucario and move on to the Milotic. Now, I finished the Lucario using Chatter instead of Fly because I didn't want to chance the miss, but that has an implication for the Milotic. In a lot of fights, Cynthia likes to choose Mirror Coat if you're using special moves, so I didn't think going for Hyper Voice was the right choice here because she'd probably just one-shot Chatot. Unfortunately for me though, I got it wrong. She is choosing Ice Beam here, but Fly does more than half, and I can finish the Milotic after that. So, I have made it to the Garchomp. I think I've won. The only way I could lose here is if it gets a critical hit with Dragon Rush after I heal using Roost. Slowing the fight down does have this side effect. Whenever you're giving the enemy more turns, if they crit, you're gonna lose. And yeah, that's what happens here. Chatot goes down again. Pretty frustrating. Still, in the very next battle, I make it back to the Garchomp, this time with ridiculously high health. I finish it, move on to the Roserade, and knock it out. Clocking in with Chatot's time, 2 hours, 22 minutes, and 19 seconds, with 15 resets at level 87, with a game time of 7 hours and 51 minutes. This time is not what I was expecting. I actually budgeted an entire day of time to play and do this voiceover, which is not usually what I need for Pokemon Platinum runs. Typically the run takes like 3 to 4 hours in the worst case scenario, and then I can do the voiceover for the video in like 2 to 3 hours. But I thought I was really going to need a full 8-hour chunk to get this done today. But I'm going to be finished work early today because Chatot was a serious monster. With a time under 2 hours and 30 minutes, it earns itself a placement in the B tier. Its result was better than Weavile's, and just slightly worse than the first playthrough I did with Giratina. So apparently in Generation 4, flying types are actually pretty good. Honchkrow right now has the top slot in this tier list. Shaman Sky is in second place in the A tier. I guess we could think about Arceus like a flying type if it's holding the Sky Plate. Chatot really outperformed in the B tier, and if you're looking in the D tier at Pokemon like Crobat and Drifblim, well, both of them aren't very good for other reasons, not just the flying type. And then Staraptor was played very early into the series. When I come back and do another run with it, it's going to be an absolute monster. It is a really good Pokemon. That said, I don't think the reason that Chatot outperformed is because it's a flying type. It's a special attacker, and it gets good special moves, which combo well with its normal type and the Silk Scarf. I think that's the reason it excelled today, and I can't wait to use this thing in the future when it gets access to Boom Burst. That move is just so broken. If you support me on Patreon or through YouTube memberships, thank you so much. It means the world to me, and you really do keep these videos coming, because without your support, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. Now, if you've made it this far, you're incredible. I'll see you in my next video.